everyone. I'm Jamie Vaughn from How She Got There, a Nxt podcast. And today my guest is Allie Littman, who's the head of engineering from Modern Health. And she's going to tell us about her career path and what inspires her and how she thinks we can get that next generation inspired to go into tech. Hi, Allie. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing very well. How are you doing, Jamie?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. So tell me, what did you think you were going to be when you grew up?
Yeah, I had so many different ideas of what I was going to be when I grew up, ranging from paleontologist to journalist to business executive. But I think one thing that was persistent during all of this was this idea that I was bad at math, or at
Mm-hmm.
least better at other subjects involving
Mm-hmm.
memorization or language.
Get that?
So definitely wasn't looking at tech or any STEM area at any point in time early on.
That's really cool. So, what changed that thought process? Because I'm still bad at math at 44. So, what
Yeah,
changed that made you want to go into engineering?
yeah. So my story really starts with an experience I had in high school where I owned a small jewelry business, and I noticed a few things about myself. Like I seemed to be a natural leader of people. I thought business strategy and organizational problems were interesting, so I went and I studied a business at UC Berkeley at Haas. So that's really where all of this starts, and I started to contend with this story that I had mentioned before about being bad at math, and that translated into being bad at computers. So when I went to go look at companies, I was avoiding all tech companies. It's like, that's not my skill set. Was not looking there at all. And so via a twist of fate, for a variety of reasons, I actually did end up interviewing at a tech company. And so the way that I look at that experience was they assessed my skills, and they realized that I was a good collaborator. I was a good strategist. I was a great systems thinker. And I could use logic to solve problems. So I think they understood that I had this great technical capacity to be able to solve these more complex issues, whether they were organizational or systems. At the end of the day, they were systems problems. And that was a skill set that I had that I just hadn't really realized.
Right.
And so I ended up at this organization where I really got to go deep on both technical program management, but also healthcare and software, and kind of the inner workings of how you would run a large tech company in the healthcare space.
Okay. So, what was your first job then? Was it straight into an engineering type job or project management or something like that?
Yes, my first job was something akin to technical program management.
Okay.
So I worked on a cross-functional team with engineers, and from there was able to grow my technical understanding of those systems. And my job over time became increasingly more engineering oriented and then engineering leadership oriented. And that's kind of how the career progression came to be, where I got to start tackling some of these large engineering leadership problems throughout my career.
Mhm. Okay. So, as somebody myself who knows nothing really about tech and what engineering really means, so if you don't have that engineering background, how did you become head of engineering? And what does your day to day kind of look like of what you can tell us?
Yeah. So that job comes with, or I'll take a step back actually. So the way that I got to this particular role was from really, doing the job in a startup environment. So, I started working in engineering specific departments at a certain point in my career.
Okay.
And once that shift happened, I started to really grow into an engineering leadership role by being the person that was always solving the large technical, strategic, and organizational problems
Mhm.
across my teams. At a certain point in time, that turned into starting to lead teams myself, and then starting to lead the managers of those teams, and really helping to be the one to define technical strategy, organizational strategy, etc. And I really got there by being the one that raised my hand and was able to, step up take
Hmm.
the jobs that no one else wanted, and really make sure that we were solving the most important problems, even if there wasn't anyone assigned to those issues. So, by kind of filling that leadership void in some of these organizations, I was able to create that home for myself and really build my career on top of that. So now my day to day, I don't do programming as part of my day to day.
Okay.
My day to day is more around how do I identify what are the top problems that we need to be solving
Hmm.
in terms of our delivery, in terms of our tool set, in terms of where our product needs to go and where the company needs to go to ensure that we're successful. How do we organize people around those problems? How do we
Hmm.
ensure they got the right resources and they can be efficient in what they're doing? And they have strong clarity of direction. So really understanding what's a priority and how do we achieve those goals that
Hmm.
we've set for ourselves. I'm the one that's the master conductor to ensure that we get there.
I've done almost 20 of these interviews, and almost every single lady said, I raised my hand. And I think that's really important. I work with a lot of young women in my office, and I'm constantly telling them, if you want that position, if you want to step a little bit further, you have to raise your hand, you have to speak up. And sometimes I think that we're taught, I don't even know if we're taught. I just think it's one of those things society wise that we're just going to be quiet more often. And I do think that that's important that we raise our hand if we think we can do the job, because we never are really going to know unless we try, and I love here at my company, it's okay to fail quickly so you can learn how to fix it. But I do think it's really important that we start teaching women raise your hand. So I'm glad that that's something that you brought up. So, what do you think sets Modern Health apart from other companies that might be similar in that healthcare space?
Yeah, Modern Health has not only a great business model that
Mhm.
allows it to be successful in how it brings mental health care to the
Yeah.
individuals that need it, which is through employers.
Hmm.
But also, it has a great culture and mission. And I think that there's this internal amplification of the mission and the way that our company is set up, really focused on diversity, equity, inclusion, and mental health care that really allows it to bring in the right kind of people who can then deliver products
Hmm.
that really match those values and match that mission. And I think it's hard pressed to find a group of people
Right.
that are so rallied around the same mission set that really allows us to deliver at a rate and grow at a rate even that is quite impressive. The company has grown, I think, at the beginning of pandemic about 30-ish people.
Hmm.
Now, this far in, it's over 400 people.
Oh
Um,
my goodness! In
so
two
it's
years?
correct, yeah. So uh,
Wow.
an incredible amount of growth. And so the fact that they were able not only to scale, but scale those values and find
Mhm.
those people who can really deliver on the mission has really made it a very, very special place to be. And I think that is what allows us to drive our differentiation and success in the market too.
Wow. So, are you remote, or are you on campus, or do you have a bit of a hybrid model?
So we are currently doing remote first, but what that means at Modern is that we are essentially entirely remote and distributed. But we have about four different connection opportunities a year. So we are investing in bringing people together so they
Mhm.
can build those interpersonal connections and really energize people. Whenever we bring people together, everyone leaves extra energized, ready to collaborate with a higher level of empathy for their peers than they had before.
Mhm.
It's so wonderful to see, especially considering the rest of the time, we're trying to do our best as we're, strewn literally all over the world.
Right. Right. So we have a mixed of a hybrid point, but most of our people are in Nashville. We have a few people out in Seattle as well, but we really do make sure that the Seattle crew comes in 2 or 3 times a year, and that we have a remote day for us as well, that we can kind of work life balance a little bit easier for all of us. So moving from that point, how do you balance that? I mean, you've got this huge career, this big job, it feels like. How do you get at the end of the day, to balance work and family and extracurricular? How, what works for you? Or is there even an answer for that?
Yeah, so I would say what works best for me is to really first break down what do I even care about? What's important to me? And how do I want to feel? throughout the day. I think that's an important thing to be optimizing for. Do you want to feel calm? Do you want to feel energy? Do you want to feel love? Like, what are those things that you're optimizing for in terms of how you feel? And then figure out what are the activities I need to be spending time doing on a daily
Mm-hmm.
basis. So I usually organize my time around the things that I've determined are valuable. Maybe a lot of us do this naturally, but I think
Mm-hmm.
people that are not as successful balancing work and life haven't done as much work to ensure that they even know what they're trying to
Mm-hmm.
achieve. And so therefore their schedule gets a little bit out of whack. Of course, we have a lot of things that we might need to be able to do for work. And I think an important thing to remember is, in our culture, we optimize for urgency when it's not always essential.
Mm-hmm.
And so really getting honest with yourself about what do you need to actually deliver on, and how much of that is actually expected of you. I think as women, we often put a lot of additional pressure on ourselves to do more, to do more, to do more, when that's not even necessary to be
Mm-hmm.
viewed as successful by the various success barometers that we might be measured against.
Yep.
So I think what's important is to really understand how you want to be spending your time, and then, really focus on what exactly do you need to do and what are those outcomes, and organize
Mm-hmm.
your time that way rather than by certain number of hours spent working, or by trying to finish everything, exactly, 3 weeks in advance.
Right.
So I think it's just really important to have those boundaries, but organize them around where you need to make sure you're making time for yourself. So for me, what that looks like is spending time making sure I get exercise and move around, since I am working from home.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, that means that during certain hours of the day, I might prioritize going to the gym because there's a workout that I need to do over going to maybe a less important meeting, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe I make sure that I make time for that. And so I need to end my day at a certain time. I always say self-care is just as important as picking up the kids from school. So I think it's another thing to, make sure that we are doing that on top of all of our other responsibilities, and making sure
Mm-hmm.
that that's a top priority.
Yep. I totally, completely get that. So, how do you think that we inspire that next generation of women who are coming up, or maybe that woman who wants to make a career change to get into tech? Maybe they don't think that they're good at math and that's what they have to be. How do we make this accessible to them?
Yeah, I would encourage anybody to enter into tech, to be honest. I think it's a fantastic and dynamic space. And I think regardless of your relationship with code or technology, I think if you're a systems thinker, you might be able to find a happy home. So just don't write it off. I know so many really, really, really brilliant women who came into tech much later in life, and they've really been able to leverage their strengths. Maybe
Mhm.
you're just a great problem solver. Maybe you love logic. All of these things really, really connect well to programming, and other jobs inside of tech, which aren't just programming. And I think that's also another common misconception, at least in the software engineering space, is there's so many roles that people can take on, and you can learn on the job quite a bit about how systems operate, and have a really, really great career in a really growing and dynamic space.
Mhm.
So I would definitely say, get exposed to code if you can. There's so many easy courses to get access to and lightweight ways to try it out. Um,
Mhm.
and I think some people get intimidated, or they feel like, it's a big investment. They might not like it. I recommend taking really short courses, seeing how it makes you feel. If you end up coding all night because you're so excited about solving a problem, that means something.
Yeah.
That means it might be energizing to you.
Mhm.
So yeah, I just strongly recommend people checking out tech, whether that's a programming role or not, because it's such a great equalizer of an industry. I think it's also, more supportive to women and minorities than
Mhm.
maybe other industries, or at least has a lot of opportunity to change, considering the way that, we do iterative development in software engineering. There's often a lot of iterative change that's happening in terms of how
Mhm.
people organize and how people are rewarded. And because of that, it has, I think, the most opportunity for positive change in terms of how it's organized socially as well.
Great. That's great advice. So, I want to hear that has been your greatest career advice that you've ever been given.
I think the greatest career advice I've ever been given has been around really just leaning into your strengths.
Mm-hmm.
So I think as women, we focus a lot on the things that we're bad at or the things that we don't have. And that's why a lot of women won't apply to certain jobs because they don't meet 100% of the criteria.
Right.
On the flip side of that, there are things that you are quite good at.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the things you need to focus on and determine what kind of role aligns with that, or understand that someone might want to pay you a lot of money for those
Mm-hmm.
skills. And
Right.
that happened when I was actually thinking about pivoting away from healthcare, which I think it's totally fine to try different industries. Not saying that that's an issue, but in this particular case, I realized that in terms of like connecting me to the right opportunities, my expertise in healthcare system strategy actually was one of my top qualities that made me
Mm-hmm.
a rare find. And so leaning into that and leaning into other things that I was good at, like the people organization strategy, really allowed me to sell myself to say, hey, I can do these jobs. I might
Mm-hmm.
look different than other candidates. That is true. I will always look different than other candidates in
Right.
many, many different ways. But my strengths can possibly carry me. You just need to acknowledge them, go for those opportunities, and then learn how to sell them.
Mm-hmm. Love that. So I just lost my question. um, what I would love to know is what you think inspires you the most in life.
Ooh, in life. I honestly am just really inspired by the women that came before me and the women that follow me. I think
Mm-hmm.
all of the women that I interact with, both professionally and personally, are so impressive and inspiring. And I
Mm-hmm.
see how far we've come. And I know I'm grateful for all the work and unfortunately suffering women had to go through to make it possible for me to be a leader today. It wasn't a thing in my mom's generation. She was a programmer. Um,
Oh wow.
and she left the workforce early on, after I think a pretty normal looking career in engineering. Left the workforce pretty early on to start a family, which is great, but I don't think she would have been, even if she stayed, she would have been given the same opportunities. But I think it's incredible that it's a thing in my generation. And I also view possibly my mom's contributions, even like looking at this long story and long history of women working in tech. It's amazing that she was
Mm-hmm.
doing that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I can really just see the progress that we've made. And I hope that the women that follow me, who I'm also inspired by, really can do even better via any legacy I'm leaving about making the workplace a better place for women to succeed. So our work isn't done, but I'm very excited by the talent that follows me.
Great. Now, Ali, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Uh, Probably the best way is to find me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So that's probably the number one way. Just shoot me a message. I am very easy to get connected to, and I always love to have little mentorship chats.
Oh, great. All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for listening today. And Ali, thank you for coming by and talking. And can't wait to see what happens next in your career.
Thank you, Jamie.